Welcome back to our Mask series, from pub floor to boardroom, and how childhood masks shaped my corporate game. If you think the corporate ladder is about spreadsheets and strategy, I think you're looking at the wrong map. Today, I'm peeling back the layers of why my most valuable business degree was actually earned by grunting at my siblings, rigging a jukebox in a British pub, and reading crowds of clubbers. I started talking late, like really late. My mum was so terrified of my silence that she took me to see the doctor, convinced I was missing a few gears in the development engine. The doctor checked me out and just looked at me, then back at my mum and smiled, proclaiming, "There's nothing wrong with him. He just doesn't need to talk." And he was right. You see, I am the youngest of five children. In our house, if I pointed and made a noise vaguely resembling a caveman, or as it was, a cave kid, I had an army of three sisters and a brother, and my mum scrambling to fetch me juice boxes and toy cars. I was a baby Neanderthal in a high efficiency service environment. Oh yes, I was a master of delegation before I even could even pronounce a word. Welcome to my early career. As I grew, I realized that while grunting worked as a toddler, the real world required a bit more finesse. To be honest, a lot more finesse. Later, in my formative years, my parents ran a pub in the UK, and we lived right above the noise upstairs. While other kids were playing in sandpits or chasing balls, my social laboratory was the games room. All that noise from downstairs was just too tempting. My mother would frequently find me hiding among the adults, tucked into a corner with my eyes wide open at 10 p.m. I learned very quickly that the right mask could get me anything. A certain look or a specific bit of help that I could give to a regular would land me free credits on the arcade machine, a chocolate bar, or a game of pool. I wasn't just being a kid. I was learning to read faces, tones, and actions, and using that knowledge to get what I wanted. I was learning to navigate a house of six other distinct personalities and a pub filled with hundreds more. You see, my favourite game wasn't Paul or Pac Man, though. It was the jukebox. Now, I know to most, a jukebox doesn't sound really like a game. Bear with me and I'll explain. Just before the pub opened every day at 6 p.m., I'd use my status as the landlady's son to open the jukebox, to click the secret button, click, 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 click. And all of a sudden, I had 20 free jukebox credits. I'd programmed the first 20 songs to play that evening. There's just enough time before I have to officially go to bed at 7:30 p.m. Then I'd sit back and watch. I'd see how the first punters reacted to certain tracks. I'd watch the energy in the room shift when a classic rock anthem followed by a somber ballad, and how a latecomer would react to the tempo quickening. I was learning to read a crowd long before I ever stepped into a DJ booth, or, for that fact, led a product team. I was learning that to lead a room or a dance floor, you have to understand its frequency way before anything else. And trust me, find the right frequency is much harder when your audience hasn't already had 2 pints of lager. This is where my love for experiments came from as well. Some weeks I'd play the same 20 tracks each day in a different order, switch them from increasing tempo one night to the reducing tempo another, or maybe playing songs with known choruses late on in the evening so people could sing along. Wow, that's a blast from the past. And some poignant insight to my work approach. And that explains a lot about my agency skills. This childhood skill of reading the room did become my most secret weapon in the corporate arena. Years later, I found myself in a high stakes meeting with a major fashion brand. We had two co founders in the room who were as different as oil and water. One was flamboyant, obsessed with design, and spoke in metaphors about soul and texture. The other, stoic, analytical, and lived for raw metrics. We showed them two design concepts, and predictably, they were split. One loved the design of A, the other was ready to bet the farm on design B. The tension started to rise. That sharp professional friction that usually leads to an expensive, let's go back to the drawing board. You know, that failure where everyone leaves frustrated. I didn't wait for them to square off. I didn't try to use logic to explain why design A was statistically superior or why design B had better vibes. Instead, I used the mask of the mediator. This is great, I jumped in, cutting through the Discord. I can see there are elements of both designs you like. Let's walk through the specific vision each of you has and combine them later. By reading their frustration early, I redirected the energy. I allowed each of them to space to wax lyrical about what they loved, rather than attacking each other with what they didn't. I wasn't just managing a project. I was programming the jukebox to make sure everyone stayed on the dance floor. I know some tech leaders aren't supposed to be people, but a little bit empathy never hurt a roadmap, and it can save a massive foul. Talking of failing, as old adults, we are often forced into masks that suppress our best traits. I believe modern education, particularly to blame, it drills new ideas and creativity out of us in favor of formulas and standardized tests. But the most dangerous mask we are taught is to wear is the fear of failure. In school, failure is a great big red X and a bad grade. In my book, failure is the only way to find your limits. If you aren't allowed to fail, we never push hard enough to succeed. In the studio, I tell my team, features don't fail. They just teach us something different to what we were expecting. And by identifying risks early and allowing the unknowable, we remove the mask of perfection and replace it with a mask of resilience. We aren't trying to be perfect. We're trying to be happy in the often messy world of product. We need to be the most adaptable players on the field for when it may not go exactly how we expected. And I tell you what, it does happen a lot. I also learned as a child that a happy, positive kid gets way more attention and cooperation than one that nags and complains and moans. The same is true in high stakes world of tech. Negative patterns, complaining, nagging, and playing the victim rarely work in a high performance environment. But the person who is nice, fun, and great at their job, someone who can see through the anguish to find the positive, that is the person who everyone wants to work with. That is the person who aligns teams and gets the difficult features across the line. You know, being pleasant and positive is a tactical advantage. Don't tell the cynics. They'll want in on our secret. And think about the people you love working with. I bet they aren't the ones who are perfect or the ones that never make a mistake. I bet they are the ones who are positive, kind, and authentically human. They are the ones who know how to switch their mask to fit the moment without losing their soul. They understand that leadership isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's about being the person who understands the room's frequency the best. So, here is your next step. Tomorrow, when you walk into a meeting or a disagreement, stop trying to use raw logic to win. Logic is a blunt instrument. Instead, try to read the frequency. Look at the person's face. Are they scared of losing control? Or are they excited about a new idea? Are they looking for security or for an adventure? Switch your approach, or mask, as I call it, to match their need. If they need a collaborator, be that. If they need a steady hand, be that. Watch how much faster the solution appears when you stop pushing against the door and allow them to open it with you. You've been listening to Christopher Stanley and my Masks podcast. If you've enjoyed the show today, please drop a like, drop a comment, and don't forget there is that free subscription too. At the end of the day, the boardroom isn't that different from a smoke filled games room in the 80s. It's all about finding the right frequency and playing the track that moves the crowd.